Here with my grandparents, Rob and Ruth Lackey, in Salt Springs, New Brunswick. They were my deceased father's parents. I was there so that I could attend school while my mother and stepfather decided where they were going to live and sorted out the post-war business of buying a home. At least, that's why I think I was there. I was not the only extra person in the house at the time. My grandmother had a boarder. I had been told about him. He was my great-great-uncle and was 93 years old. I don't know how old my mother was.
Oh, she was in grade 3, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was not a relative of my grandparents, but an uncle on my mother's side. My grandmother called him Mr. Holder, and I called him Uncle Abe. Uncle Abe was a small, wiry man. He looked frail, but was agile and strong. He could still split wood, an activity he enjoyed. He had white hair with a neatly trimmed short beard and mustache. He wore a dark suit, with the lapels spattered with food, as was the dark shirt that could be seen underneath. He wore glasses, and with them his vision was excellent. One time I saw him spring from his chair, nimbly cross the room, pick up a penny he could see under the kitchen table, hold it up and say, "Missus, can I have that?" Uncle Abe did not talk much and never responded to the questions I asked him, although his hearing was quite good. He was a Seventh-day Adventist and would try to talk to my grandmother about her celebration of the Sabbath on the wrong day, and how the second coming could happen any time now. My grandmother, who was a devout Baptist, would just say, "I am not going to disagree with you, Mr. Holder." As part of his religious beliefs, he would not eat pork. One time we had a brick of ice cream, which was a big treat in those days with no electricity. My grandmother generously gave him a nice bowlful. He looked at it suspiciously, patted it all over, and said, "Missus, there is pig in this." Uncle Abe spent quite a bit of time in a rocker just outside his bedroom door, especially if there were visitors. He was always very concerned that people would try to rob him. At other times, he paced the length of the veranda, singing old hymns, his favorite being "He Leadeth Me," which he sang as "He leadeth me." A visit was arranged for his brother Rain and sister Aggie to be brought to see him. Uncle Abe was not pleased when he was told, and said he did not want to see them. Before they arrived, he shut himself in his room and refused to come out. No amount of pleading would make him change his mind. At one point, he shouted, "Go away! You're just here after my money." Aunt Aggie, who would have been 90 at the time, got very close to the door and said firmly, "We don't want your money, Abram. We have plenty of our own." He did not speak again or open the door, and eventually the visitors left. Uncle Abe knit his own gray long underwear. He knit his mittens as well, but did not know how to put in the thumbs, so wore them thumbless. My grandmother offered him mittens she had knit, but he refused them. His own were fine, he said. One cold winter day there was a big commotion. I saw my grandfather rushing Uncle Abe in from the outside, practically shouting, "Holder, your thumbs are frozen." Uncle Abe denied it, doing a little jig in the kitchen to show that he was fine. My grandfather immersed his hands in the wash basin, Uncle Abe protesting all the while. The next day he showed my grandfather he now had thumbs in his mittens. He had wrapped yarn thickly around his thumbs, and that is what he did daily for the rest of the night. Quite a character. Eventually my grandmother decided she could keep him no longer. He was picked up late one afternoon. When the car reached Sussex, the lights were all on throughout the town. "Is this New York?" Uncle Abe asked. Perhaps that was what New York looked like when he saw it last. He spent his remaining years under the care of his niece Marjorie Bannister, and he died February 1949.